I used Chat GPT at home. Hey, I also want to use it at office. Is not coming from two guys. It is coming from all your employees. You know what you are battling, right? And therefore, I would like to put a model firewall. Now, it is not that I'll just ask model to give the design, because then it will give what it knows. Make sure model gives you what you want.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesdays with Trailblazers, brought to you by TechEdge AI, the video podcast where we bring you the latest trends and insights in AI and technology. I'm your host, Siddesh, and today we have with us Prasanna Raghavendra, engineering site leader at JFrog. With a passion for engineering's excellence, Prasanna has a knack for turning complex technologies challenges into scalable developer first solutions. So, without further ado, let's welcome Prasanna. Hey, Prasanna, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Sid. Thank you for having me here.
Likewise, we're quite excited to see what wonderful insights you have for us. So, Prasanna, first things first, you've gone from, building startups to leading one of JFrog's largest engineering organizations in India, right? So, what has that journey taught you about scaling, innovation teams, and technology in a rapidly evolving world?
Yeah, great question. Building is something bug, hit me probably a little later in the career. I was doing, I was consulting with a lot of large enterprises. So you learn a little bit, you unlearn a little bit, and then you find, hey, this is something that I actually want to hold on to, right? And I think that was DevOps for me. Like, how do we help software engineers develop better software, faster and cheaper? That was the direction that my passion was. It took some time to learn that. And then, so once passion hits, you kind of do whatever it takes to do it, right? And then that's where my journey was. And I met JFrog, most of the customers we were selling also. One of the common investor, they said, hey, you guys seem to be selling and doing similar things. Why don't you talk and kind of merge, right? So that's what happened. And that's how JFrog came to Bangalore. Good thing is, I continue to do what I was doing, in the startup, thanks to JFrog, the CTO there, Yao, and continue to help on various other things that are coming, our way.
Well, that's really great to know, Prasanna. Now, Prasanna, DevOps gave us speed, DevSecOps added safety. What's broken that EveryOps is trying to fix?
Nice question. Actually, nothing is broken. I think the problem is more on the scope. Actually, even before DevOps came, it was most, shall I call it as dev test or whatever? The issue has been different kinds of role trying to help organizations. So software has been a differentiator for most of the business, probably all the business. And if you have to use the differentiator effectively, you need to release software effectively, right? So all the things that you mentioned, is it tested? So continuous integration was the innovation there, right? Then this was the innovation saying, are you releasing fast enough? Right now, the third that thing you mentioned is, are you releasing things in a secure fashion? Right, but what happened is, it did not end there, right? And what we see is more and more actors are coming. You have the risk officer coming, because software is an important asset for any business, right? You have compliance officer coming, and you have this new animal called agent coming. So there are this, should I call it as agent ops? Should I call it as GovOps? Should I call it as compliance? So I think it's a matter of combining everything and make sure you do everything for one common reason, to basically differentiate yourself in the industry, right? And therefore we call it as every ops.
Got it. Now, EveryOps sounds like a unification story, right? So, what's the resistance you've seen when companies try to merge siloed dev and security teams into one model?
Yeah, so the resistance really is a difference in uh, their goals, right? And that's what drives most of these resistance. Now, I want to make sure it is secure, but I don't care about releasability or productivity. I want to make sure it is compliant. So I don't care what you do when you do, but on a Saturday afternoon, you please answer my audit questions. Right? So these are the things that comes because each one of them are paid to do their role, and they want to do their role effectively. It is this resistance, I would say, that need to be resolved, right? And that's where these kind of platforms are expected to help, right? The idea is, how do you bring everyone on the same table so that they talk in common terms from day one of any change, right? End of the day, software is about managing change, right? Every line of code is a change. So if everyone knows this code is changing, everyone is prepared for this change, and make sure they are really relenting themselves to do their job on that change. Right now, it becomes complex if the changes are more, if the changes are different, if the changes are contradicting. Right, all of that are the challenges that you need to handle. But effectively bringing one platform where all these roles can talk on common language is what it tries to address.
Got it. Now, this one I'm quite interested to know what the answer would be. So, if a CTO started the EveryOps shift tomorrow, what's the first thing to change? Tooling process or people?
Yeah. So see, now I was a CTO before as well. The things that I heard from Jeff Bezos, right, on a similar question, like, hey, if world is changing, but Amazon is still continuing its growth for a long time, so how are you managing change? Was the question, right? So the answer was very, very interesting. What he said is, hey, I don't look at change, what doesn't change, and focus on that. Right? He said, what doesn't change is customer want cheap, customer want predictability in delivery. That's what I've been focusing for ages. So in a similar way, a CTO of an organization needs to look at predictable software delivered faster. That should be his focus. So if that is the focus, it's not about whether he should tweak process, people, or tool, right? It is about where is the bottleneck coming for me to deliver this, right? So you need to take a step back and look at, and then bring these kind of tools or platforms to help them tweak those areas, right? So that's how I see it. It's not just one you pick; it's all the above, or it depends, however you take it. But we need to look at every organization differently and make sure where the bottlenecks are. Because sometimes you don't need DevOps at all, because the team is really working very well, and it's human interaction that is happening very well. You probably don't need a platform as long as it is small. If it becomes big, it is humanly hard to understand what is going on, and you will probably need a platform to help them.
Perfect. Now, let's speak about shadow IT. Shadow IT was a known problem for a decade, right? So, how big is the shadow AI blind spot in enterprises today?
The difference from shadow IT and shadow AI is mainly the kind of adoption it is taking, right? AI is the bottom of adoption, right? Shadow IT, it was mostly, I play this role, I looked at these three tools, I want to use this tool, right? It was very slow, and it was controllable to a good extent. But here, I used chat GPT at home. Hey, I also want to use it at office. Is not coming from two guys, it is coming from all your employees, right? I'm just taking example of chat GPT, whatever they're using. It's even your daughter, your son, everyone wants to use it, right? So the adoption is so significant, and it is so relevant for every problem they are trying to solve. That's where shadow IT is become shadow AI, as it is called, is become a big challenge, because no one knows who is using what, right? That was one problem. The second problem, the unknowns are also very high, because this is the kind of change that has happened in AI is, it is built on probabilistic model, not a predictable model. The software we knew was predictable. If you give one, it was always giving two. Right now, if you give one, 99 times it may give two. One last time it may give one again, right? So that is dependent on multiple other things, right? For example, the kind of data that was used to train, the kind of data that the company itself is feeding it, right? So it is learning, and that's where even the personal usage to office usage may change the context of how it behaves, right? So there are a lot of complexity of how the model itself will behave depending on the usage, and that adds much more larger footprint to the unknowns. And I think that's where shadow AI even becomes a harder problem than shadow IT. You're right, it was there for a decade, but this is a problem that is still hard to manage, I must say.
That's a great perspective. Now, Prasanna, AI models now sit inside production pipelines like dependencies used to, right? So, what does that change about the attack surface?
Yeah, let me extend the previous answer to this as well. Let's understand anatomy of a AI, right? So what does AI mean? At the center, it has an LLM, right, which can semantically answer certain things, which is now really become the holy grail of all AI. And there are other AIs, but this is what is primarily being used today. And to that, we have this rules and memory that you give, right? Saying, hey, you do this, don't do this, etc., and a little bit of memory so that it can hold the context. And then you give skills which are kind of giving guardrails of, hey, this is what I mean, blah blah blah. And then you give MCP is right, the interface that it can go out and get some structured responses, right? So this is broadly what AI means. Right now, if this sits in your production pipeline, what are the attack surface, right? So one is the model itself, and I'll give you some specific examples. The model itself, it depends on what it was learned on, and is it applicable to what you're trying to do in your production pipeline. It's that's one challenge that you have. The second is the MCP that it is given with, how much of control you have, and what it can access, what it cannot access, etc. And the third is, when you give these rules, um, how effective are these rules getting used by the role that is using the model, right? Like if I am I may the CTO of the company, I have access to everything. Now, does the agent working for me works like CTO, or a small thing that I am trying to do, right? And that becomes a big attack surface, right? If I use the CTO's access, he has pretty much access to the entire company. And should the agent have that access just to do a Google Doc update? I think these are the reasons why when AI sits in a production pipeline, the attack surface and the complexity of the attack is significantly high. And also there's the fear of unknown, because there's so much of things going on, you don't know how to handle them as well, right? I think that's where this whole new era of security for AI is picking steam, and people are looking around.
Great to know that. Now, this one is another one I'm keen on understanding is, if you could walk us through what an attack on an AI pipeline actually looks like, but not the theoretical version.
Yeah. So let me go back, just to give you a little bit of history of hacking. And I think that will kind of help us understand like what's going on, right? Like Jeff Bezos said, what does not change for a hacker? For him, he need to get maximize money and minimize cost, right? That's pretty much what he wants to do. Now, if he wants to do that, in the earlier days, he used to attack OSs like Windows. If I hack Windows, every billions of guys have Windows, I can make a lot of money. But the problem was was very hard, because it's completely guardrailed. Hacking into a Microsoft Office and then putting your bug was not easy. So you used to spend a lot of time. So earlier hackers used to be rich to start with, right? And then were becoming richer. Right now, the next level was the world of open source. So what happened is, now I can poison one little open source dependency, and that will be probably used by a lot of them. So I can increase the surface area of attack by that, and then make money, right? Great. And that's where the whole software supply chain attacks became very popular, right? Now with AI in the pipeline, the next level is getting into the CI system, right? I don't only attack a dependency. Now I get into CI, get credentials, and now do a replicating worm, so that the entire development environment is poisoned, right? Not just one developer, it's the entire organization who is producing multiple binaries, and you kind of spreads across, right? That was the Shai Hulud attack that happened. Get to the real thing, it is happening. It's not theory. Recently in September last year, I guess, Shai Hulud became a big attack, exactly kind of this. Now with AI, they're looking at, I mentioned the anatomy of AI model. There are two things which go out. Whichever is sitting inside, they're not interested. Two things that go out is the MCP itself. Now MCP is going out to connect to various things, right? Now to do that, you have to give it access, saying, hey, go talk to this system, get response, and here is your access, right? So now MCP, or the MCP orchestrator, has enough credential for it to kind of, you know, uh, uh, connect to these systems, and therefore it is a good surface area for attack, right? So that's one. And that what happened, I think again in September last year, postmark MCP attack happened, which is exactly that. So they created a dependency which was pushed into MCP, and it sat there and all the credentials and started sending duplicate mails to one mail ID for every OTPs that was coming, every email password change that was coming. So someone was sitting and attacking every change that was happening from a system perspective. Right? So those are the things that can be done. At the next level, so this is now basically hacking into the AI workflow itself. The third one is what is becoming more popular is an LLM in one model is not good enough, right? It has to connect with other models for it to become much more stronger, right? And that concept is called as um, LLM gateways, right? So what you do is the model itself, hey, and one of the one of the very popular one was LLM Lite, which became even popular because of the hacking called, in March this year, where the gateway to connection had again all the credentials, and it was poisoning all the other models in the system, and it had access even better than CTO, an IT admin, having everything, and it was kind of poisoning whatever it wanted. And it came out because one of the developers RAM, because he used cursor, choked, right? And all of a sudden, when they look, it was actually running whatever it wanted to on a laptop, right? So that's how it is. So I think having AI in the pipeline, I'm giving you a scary story, but it's important. But at the same time, you need to have enough guardrail, to detect all these kinds of things to make sure you are well guarded before you start using whatever that is coming out there in the market.
I mean, yeah, it does sound very scary, and I'm pretty sure knowing about things actually does help because of the fact that you can avoid a catastrophe, right? So I think it's always good to know exactly how things happen and when they can happen, so that you can avoid it around when time comes, right? So moving ahead, Prasanna, what's one security control around AI models you'd refuse to compromise on, no matter, let's say, how much pressure there is to ship faster?
In the model world, with all the examples I gave, it is important to make sure you know what you're battling with, right? And therefore, I would like to put a model firewall. I don't want the company to use any other model that is coming in the industry, because too many models coming, and too many new versions of models are coming, and no one knows which is good, which is bad, because it is too fast, for anyone to do enough analysis on the inbound analysis. So first, it is important. I think this is the one that I won't give up. If I were the seat, I'll put the firewall. Like we've done firewall for binaries. In a similar way, I will put a firewall for models and make sure the company uses what the policy allows. And then the policy maker should make sure whatever they allow, they have done enough due diligence, number one, and they do continuous due diligence, because it is not about a one-time due diligence. Because earlier, because of the predictable thing, if you test this version of a tool, you're 100% indeed that, hey, I've tested enough, I did all the security tests on it, and I'm happy, they can use it. But for model, you probably have to repeat the test every other day, or whatever you want to do, to make sure the probability of it hurting us is low, right? I think that's where. So and to do that, you need to have minimum, a kind of finite set of models. If you have too many models, you can't do that. Therefore, what I don't want to compromise is having this firewall. Like, no one can use any other model apart from da. That's it, right? And if anyone wants more, then of course they can ask, and do the due diligence as needed, and open the door.
Got it. Now, this next one, I think all the software engineers want to know an answer to this one, and I think no one better to answer this, perhaps, than you. Is what does the AI era job description for a software engineer look like maybe 5 years from now?
Yeah, it's a great question. The way I think, right, with what is evolving, even I say this to my son as well, right? The first thing an engineer should have is attitude to learn, right, and unlearn, right? Because whatever you knew yesterday is becoming obsolete, right? And they should have the attitude saying, I will move forward, with whatever needs to be learned. I think that is primary. It is not just for software engineers, for anyone for that matter now, right? The second thing is, I You mentioned about this probability and deterministic model, right? To make your system work, because I'm sure, in 5 years, why 5 years? Even now we are embedding models like nobody's business. But the problem is you need to have the skill to identify what is a predictive solution and what is a probabilistic solution, right? And so that's one. So that don't apply, because I have seen, my developers running summary of an Excel sheet because it is cool and get some data, right? 99% of the time it is accurate. There are two problems. One is, you're just using tokens for things that you could do with a predictable macro or your own formulas. That's one thing that is happening. And the second thing is it may be giving you wrong results as well. And once you start trusting, you keep trusting and you'll never relook at it because it is not predictable. I think therefore you should know if it is the need is predictability, first identify that and make sure you build human handwritten code to make sure you're happy with what comes out. Of course, there'll be bug. We've lived through that cycle, right? I think in the same context, what I've seen is, we are all learning through this, right? Earlier, skill used to be a bunch of MD files. Now we are embedding scripts in it. Why are we doing it? Because for two reasons. One is I don't want MD data to be completely wrongly understood by the model, because I intend to say this, but model understood differently. So therefore, sometimes you write scripts to kind of give enough push to tell, hey, this is what you should pick for this context, right? So that's so how do you embed predictable scripts into your skills is another thing you should learn. The other area that I think is skill design itself. I think the software industry has brought to us was how relatable humans are with respect to software, right? Because even when we are designing, we kind of brought this thing called object oriented principles, right? It's very human, right? Hey, a guy has four hands, right? Or two hands and two legs, right? Defining that in a systematic way was very important, and understanding those principles and bringing that to skills is important, because we don't want skill to be too big or too small. It has to be fine grained so that the model understands what it is. So, my recommendation is still go do your design thinking, design learning very well, because that is still relevant. It is not that I'll just ask model to give the design, because then it will give what it knows. You should really make sure model gives you what you want. Of course, it does it fast, but the skill of making sure you get what you want is, what these new engineers should learn and kind of help us as well, as they go along.
God, I think very well said, and that's a lovely piece of advice in terms of how radically it's transitioning year on year based on the situation as well. So yeah, I think it's very well said on your part. Now, moving to the next segment, Prasanna, I'd love to do a rapid fire session with you where we can probably have short answers or probably one word answers from you. So it's kind of shifting gears from what we were doing right now. So let me know whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So here we go. DevOps, DevSecOps, or EveryOps, which one defines the next decade?
Yeah, clearly, every ops, because the unknowns are too many, right? With agent coming, I don't know what A2A orchestrator will come. So there are too many players creating software, right? So you need to handle everything, and every ops is absolutely the way.
Got it. AI Copilot, productivity booster, or overhyped assistant?
I think you have to use it as a productivity booster. It's about how you use it and making sure it gives you the value you need. I think you got to be smart to use it. So you got to apply your intelligence on AI.
Makes perfect sense. Open source or proprietary software, which will win the AI era?
I think open source will continue. Even AI is now getting open sourced. The models, by the way, the recent study we did, close to 40 billion artifacts that gets downloaded every year, for us with customers we have. What we do is we do a study of what kind of artifacts are getting used highly, right? Because what's the trend, right? And one of the trend today is in the last year, not today, in 2025, the second largest, leave Docker, because Docker continues to be the largest. The second largest, which surprised us, was Hugging Face models, right? And that's an open source model, so I would go open source from that perspective.
So next one, the biggest mistake companies make when adopting AI?
Don't run and jump too much into it very quickly. Take a step back, look at two perspective. Definitely, you need to have a tiger team to, do the bleeding edge piece. But I think it is not like any other adoption we have done so far, especially because of probabilistic nature. So you need to spend some time, understand if it works for you, for the use case, and then adopt it. Don't jump into the water too early.
Perfect. I guess those were some wonderful insights, Prasanna. Thank you so much for all the wonderful insights that you've shared with us today. I mean, really enjoyed hosting you on our podcast, Tuesdays with Trailblazers.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much, all, for joining today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, stay tuned with TechEdge AI for more insights. Till we meet again, signing off, your host, Siddesh.